Before you sleep tonight, there is something you should think about, something simple, something quiet, something that does not require effort to understand but requires honesty to face, because the moments before sleep are not just the end of your day, they are a reflection of how you lived it, a space where everything slows down, where distractions fade, and where the noise of the world is replaced by something much more real. During the day, it is easy to move without thinking, easy to get lost in routines, in conversations, in tasks that fill your time and keep your mind occupied. But when night comes, when everything becomes still, there is no longer anything to hide behind, no noise to cover your thoughts, no movement to distract you, only you and what remains from the day you just lived. And in that moment, something begins to surface, not loudly, not forcefully, but clearly enough to be felt, because the heart does not forget what the mind tries to ignore, and when everything becomes quiet, what you have carried throughout the day begins to appear. You begin to remember small things, moments you did not pay attention to at the time, words you said without thinking, actions you dismissed, choices you made quickly without reflection, and at first they may seem insignificant, but as they return they begin to carry weight, because what is small during the day can feel different in the silence of the night. There is a difference between doing something and reflecting on it, because when you are in motion you do not always see clearly, but when you stop, when you slow down, when you are no longer moving forward, you begin to see what you have already done, and that is where awareness begins. Some people try to avoid that moment, they reach for their phone, they fill the silence with noise, they keep themselves distracted until sleep takes over, because facing that quiet reflection is not always easy, it requires honesty, it requires a willingness to look at yourself without distraction. But that moment is important, more important than it seems, because it is one of the few times in the day when you are alone with your thoughts, when you can see clearly without influence, when you can recognize what needs to change and what needs to stay. It is also a moment of truth, because in that silence, there is no need to impress anyone, no need to explain anything, no need to appear a certain way, only the reality of what you did, what you said, and what you chose throughout the day. And this is where a question begins to form, a simple question but one that carries weight. If this day were to end not just in sleep but completely, would you be satisfied with how you lived it? Would you be at peace with what you are taking with you? Or would there be things you wish you had changed? Because sleep is a reminder, a small reminder, that you are not in control of everything, that there is a moment every day where you let go, where you enter a state that resembles something deeper, something that reminds you that one day, you will not wake up the same way again. And while most nights pass without thought, without reflection, without awareness, each one carries the same opportunity, the opportunity to pause, to think, to recognize what matters and what does not, before the day closes completely. There is also something else in that moment, something that is often overlooked, the chance to reset, to correct, to make a decision that tomorrow will not be a repetition of today, but an improvement, a step forward rather than a continuation of the same patterns. Because change does not begin in big moments, it begins in quiet ones, in moments like this where no one else is involved, where the decision is personal, where the intention is formed without pressure or influence. And yet, many people pass through this moment without noticing it, without using it, without realizing that it holds more value than many of the louder, more visible parts of their day. The truth is, how you end your day matters, because it shapes how you begin the next one. And if each day ends without reflection, without awareness, without intention, then days begin to blend together, becoming a pattern that continues without change. But when a person uses this moment, when they allow themselves to pause, to think, to feel, to recognize, something begins to shift, slowly, quietly, but consistently, because awareness leads to intention, and intention leads to action. And this is why, before you sleep tonight, it is worth asking yourself not what you achieved, not what others think of you, not what appeared on the surface, but what truly remained within you after everything else faded. Because in the end, the day does not follow you in its events, it follows you in its meaning, in what it left inside you, in what it built, in what it revealed. And that is what makes this moment so important, because it is not just the end of a day, it is a chance to see clearly, to understand honestly, and to decide consciously before everything becomes quiet again. As that quiet moment settles in, as the world around you fades and the distractions lose their hold, something deeper begins to unfold, because reflection is not only about remembering what you did, it is about understanding what those actions are turning you into, and this is where the meaning of that moment becomes more real. A person may look back on their day and see events, conversations, movements from one place to another, but beneath all of that, there is something else, something less visible but far more important, the direction those moments are creating, the pattern they are forming, and the person they are shaping over time. Because every day is not isolated, it connects to the next, and the next, building something that becomes your life not suddenly but gradually, through repetition, through habits that form without announcement, through choices that feel small but are not. And this is where the danger of ignoring reflection becomes clear, because without it, a person continues without awareness, repeating the same patterns, making the same decisions, and slowly becoming something they never consciously chose to become. It is easy to think that change will happen on its own, that there will be a moment where everything shifts naturally, but change does not appear without intention. It requires awareness first, and awareness often begins in silence, in moments like this before sleep when everything else is quiet. There is also something else that becomes clear in that moment. That time is not as endless as it feels during the day, because when you look back at your day, it feels short, it feels like it passed quickly, and this realization, repeated over many days, begins to show something deeper. Days turn into weeks, weeks into months, and months into years, and yet each one feels like it passed quickly when you look back, and this creates a realization that is difficult to ignore, that life itself is moving in the same way, quietly, steadily, without pause. And in that understanding, a new question begins to form, not about what you did today but about where all of this is leading, because if days continue in the same pattern, they will build a direction, and that direction will not change unless something within you changes first. This is why that moment before sleep is not small, it is a checkpoint, a place where you can pause and ask yourself whether you are moving in the direction you actually want, or simply continuing in a direction you never questioned. Some people feel a sense of discomfort in that moment, a feeling that something is not aligned, that something needs attention, and instead of facing it they choose to ignore it because ignoring feels easier than changing. But that discomfort is not without purpose. It is a signal, a quiet indication that something needs to be adjusted, something needs to be corrected, and if it is listened to, it can guide a person towards something better. Ignoring it does not remove it, it only delays it, and over time what is delayed becomes heavier, more difficult to change, more deeply rooted in daily life. There is also a realization that begins to take shape, that not every day will be remembered, not every moment will stand out, but every day will still contribute to something, whether it is noticed or not. And this is what gives value to even the smallest actions, because they are part of something larger, something that is being built consistently, even in moments that feel ordinary. A person begins to see that life is not made up of rare, significant events, but of repeated daily choices, and those choices over time define everything. This understanding changes how a person sees their day, because it is no longer just something to pass through, it becomes something to use, something to shape, something that carries meaning beyond the moment itself. And this is where intention becomes important, because without intention actions follow habit, but with intention actions follow direction, and that difference is what determines where a person ends up. Before sleep, that intention can be formed, not perfectly, not completely, but clearly enough to create a shift, even if it is small, even if it is only one decision to do something better the next day. And that is how change begins, not in a dramatic moment, but in a quiet decision, made when no one else is watching, made honestly, made without pressure, made with awareness. Because in the end, the question is not how your day looked from the outside, but what it created within you, what it added, what it shaped, and whether it moved you closer to something meaningful or simply carried you further without direction. And as that thought settles, as the quiet becomes deeper, one thing becomes clear, that this moment before sleep is not just a pause, it is a chance to see, to understand, and to choose before another day begins. As that awareness continues to grow, the quiet before sleep begins to feel different, no longer just a moment of rest, but a moment of truth, a space where everything becomes clear in a way that is not always possible during the day, because in that stillness, there is nothing left to distract you from yourself. A person begins to notice that what matters most in that moment is not what others saw, not what was visible on the surface, but what was real, what was sincere, what was done when no one else was watching, because those are the moments that carry the most weight when everything else fades. There is a realization that forms slowly, that the version of you that appears in front of people is not always the same as the one that exists in private, and that difference, whether small or large, is something that only you are fully aware of in those quiet moments. And this is where honesty becomes unavoidable, because there is no one else to convince, no one else to impress, only yourself and what you know to be true, and that truth cannot be hidden in silence, it becomes clearer. Some people feel a sense of peace in that moment, a calm that comes from knowing they did their best, that they tried, that they stayed aware, and that feeling is not accidental, it is the result of alignment, of living in a way that matches what they believe. Others feel something different, a discomfort, a restlessness, a sense that something is off, something that cannot be fully explained but is clearly present, and that feeling is also not random, it comes from the gap between what they know and what they do. And that gap is important, because it reveals direction, it shows whether a person is moving toward alignment or away from it, and without recognizing that gap, it becomes easy to continue without change. There is also something else in that moment, something that many do not consider, that sleep itself is not guaranteed in the way people assume, because every night you close your eyes without certainty that you will wake up in the same way again. That thought may feel distant, something people prefer not to consider, but it carries a reality that cannot be denied, that every day has an end, and one day that end will not be followed by another beginning in the same way. And this is where the moment before sleep becomes even more meaningful, because it is not only the end of a day, it is a reminder of something greater, something that gives weight to how that day was lived. A person begins to understand that if this night were different, if this sleep were final, then what matters is not what was planned for tomorrow, but what was completed today, what was left behind, what was carried forward. And this realization changes how reflection feels, because it is no longer just a habit, it becomes something necessary, something that holds real importance, something that cannot be ignored without consequence. There is also a shift in how a person sees time, because time is no longer something abstract, something distant, it becomes something immediate, something that is passing now, something that is being used or wasted in real time. And this awareness creates a different kind of focus, not a rushed urgency but a steady one, a clear understanding that each day matters, not because it is long or short, but because of what is done within it. The quiet of the night begins to feel like a mirror, reflecting not what you want to see, but what is actually there, showing you the truth of your actions, your intentions, your consistency, and your direction. And while that reflection may not always be comfortable, it is valuable, because it shows what needs to change, what needs attention, what needs correction before it becomes something harder to fix. A person begins to see that ignoring this moment means losing an opportunity to adjust, to improve, to move differently before patterns become permanent. Because patterns, once established, become difficult to break, and what is repeated without awareness becomes something that feels natural, even if it is not right. This is why the quiet before sleep is not just a pause, it is a checkpoint, a moment where a person can stop the cycle, even slightly, even for a moment, and choose a different direction. And that choice does not need to be large, it does not need to be dramatic, it only needs to be real, because real change begins with honesty, with awareness, with the willingness to see clearly. As that moment continues, as the silence deepens, one thing becomes clear, that this is not just about ending the day, it is about understanding it, learning from it, and deciding how the next one will be different. Because in the end, it is not the number of days that define a life, it is what is built within those days, what is repeated, what is chosen, and what is carried forward over time. And this is where everything begins to connect, because that quiet moment before sleep is not separate from the rest of your life, it is part of it, a part that has the power to shape everything that comes after it. As this awareness becomes stronger, the moment before sleep begins to carry a different weight, because it is no longer just a reflection of the day, it becomes a preparation, a quiet preparation for what comes next, not only tomorrow but something beyond tomorrow, something that every day is slowly leading toward. A person starts to understand that each night is not only an ending, it is also a closing of a chapter that will never return in the same way, because once a day passes, it becomes fixed, it becomes something that cannot be changed, only remembered. And this realization brings a sense of seriousness, not fear alone, but a clear awareness that what is done during the day is not temporary, it leaves a mark, it becomes part of something that continues, something that builds over time. Because life is not just a collection of random days, it is a record that is being written continuously, line by line, moment by moment, and the moment before sleep is one of the few times when you can step back and look at what has been written so far. Some people avoid looking at that record because it is easier not to see clearly, easier to continue without thinking, but avoiding it does not stop it from being written, it only removes the chance to correct it while there is still time. And this is where the importance of that moment becomes undeniable, because it is not only about reflection, it is about accountability, not in a distant sense but in a present one, a personal one, where you recognize what you are responsible for. There is also a realization that begins to form, that every day is an opportunity that will not return, and while that may sound simple, it carries a depth that is often overlooked, because people live as if time is guaranteed, as if there will always be another chance. But when a person truly reflects, they begin to see that nothing is guaranteed in the way they assume, that every day is given, not owned, and that what is given can also be taken without warning. And this understanding changes how a person approaches that final moment before sleep, because it is no longer just about rest, it becomes about closure, about asking whether the day was used in a way that holds value, or simply passed without awareness. There is also something else that becomes clear, that regret does not come from a single moment, it comes from patterns, from repeated days that were lived without thought, without intention, without reflection, and over time, those days accumulate into something that feels heavy. And this is why that moment is so important, because it allows a person to break that pattern, even slightly, even for a moment, by choosing to reflect, by choosing to acknowledge, by choosing to adjust. Because without that pause, without that awareness, days begin to blur together, becoming routine, becoming automatic, becoming something that continues without direction. But when a person uses that moment, when they stop, even briefly, to think about what they did, what they said, what they chose, something begins to change because awareness interrupts repetition. It creates space for improvement, for correction, for intention, and that space is what allows a person to move differently, even if the change is small at first. And over time, those small changes begin to build, just as patterns of neglect build, but in a different direction, a direction that is chosen consciously rather than followed unconsciously. There is also a deeper sense of honesty that develops in that moment, because when a person reflects consistently, they become more aware of themselves, more aware of their habits, their tendencies, their weaknesses, and their strengths. And this awareness is not meant to discourage, it is meant to guide, because knowing what needs to change is the first step toward changing it. A person begins to see that improvement is not about perfection, it is about consistency, about small, repeated efforts that slowly shift the direction of their life over time. And this is where the real value of that moment appears, because it is not just about thinking, it is about deciding what to carry forward and what to leave behind, deciding what to repeat and what to change. Because in the end, life is not shaped in the big moments alone, it is shaped in these quiet ones, in the moments where no one else is present, where the decision is yours alone. And as that realization settles, one thing becomes clear, that the moment before sleep is not just the end of your day, it is one of the most important moments within it, because it is where awareness meets choice. And what you choose in that moment, even if it is small, even if it is simple, has the power to shape everything that comes after it. As everything begins to come together, as the quiet moments before sleep start to feel heavier with meaning and clearer with truth, the final realization settles in a way that cannot be ignored, because at this point it is no longer just about reflection, it is about responsibility, about what you do with what you now see. A person begins to understand that awareness is not the end, it is the beginning, because seeing clearly creates a choice to continue as before or to change direction, and that choice, even if it feels small, carries more weight than it appears. Because every night offers the same moment, the same pause, the same opportunity, but not everyone uses it, not everyone takes it seriously, and over time the difference between those who do and those who do not becomes clear. Some people end their days without thought, moving from one day to the next without reflection, without intention, allowing patterns to continue without interruption, and those patterns slowly shape their lives without them fully realizing it. Others choose differently, they pause, they reflect, they acknowledge what needs to change, and even if they do not change everything at once, they begin, and that beginning is what sets everything else in motion. Because change does not require perfection, it requires honesty, it requires consistency, it requires a willingness to face what is real rather than what is comfortable. And this is where the true value of that moment before sleep becomes clear, because it is one of the few moments where a person can be completely honest with themselves, where there is no pressure, no expectation, no distraction, only truth. There is also a realization that becomes impossible to ignore, that time is moving whether you pay attention or not, that days are passing whether you use them or not, and that life is being shaped whether you choose consciously or not. And this understanding brings a different kind of urgency, not rushed, not chaotic, but steady, a quiet awareness that what you do now matters, that what you choose now builds something that will not disappear. A person begins to see that the moment before sleep is not just about ending the day, it is about preparing for what comes after, not only tomorrow but something greater, something that every day is leading toward. Because one day, there will be a night that is not followed by another morning in the same way, a moment where everything that has been built will stand as it is, complete and unchangeable. And when that moment comes, it will not be shaped by what you intended, but by what you actually did, not by what you planned, but by what you repeated, by what you chose consistently over time. This is why each night matters, because each one is part of something larger, part of a process that is building toward a reality that cannot be avoided. There is also a sense of clarity that forms with this understanding, because it removes the illusion that there will always be more time, always another chance, always a later moment to change. Instead, it brings focus to the present, to what can be done now, to what can be corrected now, to what can be improved now while it is still possible. A person begins to understand that the opportunity to change exists in these quiet moments, not in loud ones, not in dramatic ones, but in simple, honest decisions made consistently over time. And this is what gives those moments their power, because they are repeated, they are constant, they are available every single day, offering the same chance to reflect, to adjust, to move forward with awareness. Because in the end, it is not the big moments that define everything, it is the small ones that are repeated, the choices that are made quietly, the decisions that are made when no one else is watching. And this is where the final question becomes clear, not about what you will do tomorrow, but about what you will do tonight in this moment before you sleep, when everything is quiet and nothing is distracting you. Because that moment is real, it is present, it is yours, and what you choose to do with it, whether you ignore it or use it, whether you pass through it or pause within it, is what begins to shape everything that comes next. So before you sleep tonight, do not rush past that moment, do not fill it with noise, do not avoid it, because within that silence is a chance to see clearly, to decide honestly, and to move forward with intention rather than habit. Because what you do in that quiet moment may seem small, but in reality, it is where change begins, where direction is chosen, and where the path you are walking starts to become clear.